Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Unraveling the Darkness podcast. Tonight we have Keith Evans. Keith is a paranormal researcher and has written a couple of books. The Hayes House, Ghosts Are People Too, and Vampires, Dead or Alive. I'm talking to him just before the show. The vampire one seems pretty interesting the way that he looks at it. So thank you for joining us tonight on Unraveling the Darkness. Hey, good evening, Jason.
Hey, Aaron, how we doing?
Good. Just so everyone knows, Jason is having some internet issues, some connecting issues, and will freeze up, or maybe we lose a little bit of his audio tonight. Hopefully, that'll come back throughout the show. What's going on?
Just getting done with work, man. Still on that vacation hangover.
Right. We just got back Sunday. You were and Gino were lucky enough to have Monday off as well, and man, it's been a rough one. Let me tell you.
It was. That trip back was took it out of us.
The trip back. We are going to go into more detail on our trip tomorrow night. We're doing a special episode. We'll have Gina and Michelle in. Everyone's going to tell you their favorite stuff. I think we may try to go day by day, let everyone kind of know what happened. It was a great trip. Not only were we in Gettysburg, but we did Baltimore and Washington, D.C. as well.
Yeah, it was a blast, and it's been a long time since I've been out east, so it was nice to get back there and see everything again.
Yeah, it's we're used to the brown. Of course, we've had enough rain that it's green here, but we're more used to the brown, and everything back there is green. It was awesome. It was a good trip.
Everything is green. Yep.
I think Des, your wife, was uh, pretty happy with going back there and got to see a bunch of new stuff. We had talked before. I think that she's not well traveled, but hey, we're gonna get her there, right?
Yeah, we're gonna get her there. She had a blast. She was just soaking everything in, and yeah, that's the farthest east she's ever been. So she was excited.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool place, and can't wait to let everyone know how that trip went. We did get our Unraveling didn't, but Wow got their 2,500th follower. Dallas is going to get a special gift. We'll have pictures of that. I don't want to ruin it, but it's laying down right here.
Oh, you got it hiding back there. Yep.
Yeah, I got some of my stuff, but it's laying down right there. Got the cool souvenir over here. I don't have it framed yet. It's laying there and it's flat, so you can't really tell. But that was the well, we'll tell you tomorrow night.
Wait for tomorrow.
I'll have a frame tomorrow. So tonight, Keith Evans, we're going to talk about the paranormal research that he does, and those couple of books that he has, and where you're able to get them.
Yeah, I'm really interested to hear his take on vampires. I've always loved vampire stuff. So
yeah, he looks at it from a different side. We were talking just before the show, before he came in, and yeah, it sounds pretty cool. I think I will have to get that one and read it. Yeah, pretty neat. So let's bring Keith in, and we will chat with him for a little bit.
Hey, how's
good
it
evening,
going?
Keith. Good.
Hey,
How you
Keith.
doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Hopefully you all are doing good too.
We are doing well.
There's a little shot of my book. I don't know how well you can see it.
Yeah, the Vampire Dead or Alive one.
Yeah.
Yep, we can see it. Nice. Let's start out with the paranormal research that you have done. What got you interested in doing that?
Well, when I was 4 years old, I more or less was an empath. I could feel the joy that my relatives had within certain parts of their house, the things they were proud of. For instance, like one house had been in my mother's side of the family since about 1850 when it was built, and it had this really um, glossy, clear finish that you could see the wood through it, and it was wainscoting. And I just thought that was the neatest thing I'd ever seen. And it really made me happy. I'd always look at it and kind of giggle, you know. And I was 4 years old. So, of course, my parents were concerned that they felt that if a 4 year old is smiling at wood, that I must have Down syndrome or something. So they were convinced that I wouldn't melt much. And some family members still think that today, but it's just not true. They just weren't in tune to having a child who was an empath. But I can go into an antique store today and come out smiling and not buy a thing. But I can feel all the joy that those items brought people, all the pride. Most people, if they have an antique object, that's their favorite thing. That's the thing they want to talk about and show off to people. And most antique store people are just so angry at me. He comes in here all the time, never buys anything. I don't really collect antiques. I just like to go in for the natural high as far as being an empath. But it's true, it's
Go in and soak it all in. Yeah.
feel everybody else's, happiness about the things that they had. It's great.
Right. Yeah, I'm kind of an antique junkie too. We were he's laughing because he knows where I'm going with this. Uh, I don't at the beginning of the show we said we just got back from Gettysburg. We spent a week out there, did some investigation stuff, but like all the stuff that they have in a couple of these stores are from that Civil War time. And gosh, it's just all really neat stuff. I came across this drum major baton and I was pretty intrigued with it. And I think I may have to call them and purchase it because I'm still thinking about that dang thing. Last day there, we had to run into that store. So I went over and looked at it and I'm like, when I leave, I'm not going to buy it. But when I get out there, Gina's going to ask if I did. Sure enough, got back in the van and she's like, well, did you get it? And I was like, no. But yeah, I'm still thinking about it. So I think I may have to call them and have them ship it. So I get the
Yep. That means
antique
you
thing
want
and
it. You
like
need to get it.
just seeing all that stuff and like you don't know where it was, it makes you kind of wonder about that stuff.
Well, that's how I really got into the paranormal because I knew there was something going on that was unexplained. I knew my parents' very low, poor decision to label me was just horrible and wrong. So I knew there was something else going on, and that's what got me interested in the paranormal. And as a kid, I grew up in like Central Maryland. So I wasn't that far from Gettysburg, but I only went there a couple times. I think mainly with my grandparents and some of their friends. And I tell you, we drove through, and I felt totally sick to my stomach. I felt horrible, and I just asked them, "Could we go home?" So now that I live in Florida, I don't even know if I'd want to go on vacation there because of just how horrible I felt when I
Hmm.
was a kid. And at that point in time, I didn't know what empath meant. I didn't learn that until I was probably maybe in high school. And then I said, oh, that's what I am then. Except my abilities aren't that great. I usually have to use paranormal equipment when I do paranormal research, or, my I just don't have that powerful of a connection. I mainly feel happy or angry or sad emotions that people had. I don't get much else. But anyway, I don't know if I'd want to go to Gettysburg. I don't know if I would feel that good because, you know, sometimes when you're in the military, really tense and uncertain things can really be stomach churning.
Mhm.
And I want to stay away from that. Really want to stay away from it. So I don't mind doing paranormal when I go to a house and want to understand the history and the people that live there. But I don't know if I would want to go and spend any amount of time at Gettysburg. I think I would just probably feel miserable, and it might not be worth my money. I'd be better off taking shorter trips and staying close to Florida and just trying to get to see some of the old 1880 or from 1880 to 1920 Victorian style homes that were built in Florida during that time period. I've always wanted to own a house like that. So maybe someday I will. Sell enough
Yeah.
books, huh? But Vampires Dead or Alive mainly was something I had thought about for years. It wasn't just a book that I thought, well, I'll write about that. It started when I was in middle school. In Maryland, I would get home probably around 3:30. I lived quite close to school. If I'd have been any closer, I'd had to walk to school. That's how close I was. So so I got to ride the bus and anyway, a show. It was a British sitcom called Dark Shadows, and it came on 4:30 for like 3 or 4 years when I was in middle school. Uh, maybe late elementary school, and I enjoyed it. I just my hero. A lot of people always had comic book heroes. My hero was Barnabas Collins. I just thought he was a great person suffering through this situation and where he was a vampire. And the situation was, I just thought he was very interesting, and I always thought, how's he able to dematerialize? How's he able to shapeshift? How come he doesn't have a mirror image?
Mm.
And as I got older and got my degree in chemistry, I finished my degree in chemistry at the University of Central Florida at age 50, better late than never. And I would have made a lot more money throughout my life if I could have had that good paying job when I was younger, oh, that's for sure. But anyway, I took a lot of classes that dealt with like astrophysics, physical chemistry, and all types of physics courses. And that explained a lot of things to me as to how a vampire may be able to, say, not have a mirror image. Now, if you don't have a mirror image, you're either have some type of technology where you can bend light so that the light goes around you and it's just not hitting you to give you that image. Or it could be that you're not here in this plane. You might be in another dimension, but you might be utilizing your brain to transmit your image and your actual sound to the person you want to see you, and then that way they see you, but you won't have a mirror image. So there are reasons why you may not have a mirror image, and that's with just using, you know, basic classic physics. Now, when it comes to things like shape shifting, I think there's a little more going on with shape shifting, and I think all of us are reincarnated. I think we've been reincarnated probably hundreds of times. And I think you can be reincarnated from a human to a bat, from a bat to maybe a wolf. And I think what the vampire is able to do is to somehow, when they want to shapeshift, they're able to bend space and time just for themselves, not for everyone else, not for the room they're in, but just for them, their physical body, bend space and time and go back to when their body was actually a wolf or a bat. and then that's how the vampire changes instantaneously into a wolf or a bat or
So
whatever they want to change into.
do you think that they could then shapeshift into anything that they were previously?
Yes, if they were that
Okay.
previously in some uh, previous reincarnated life.
Right. So
So
Gina
do you
does
And of
think?
ask a good.
course,
Go ahead, Jason.
Do you think this is done by will, or is it kind of uncontrollable and just seems to happen? Like someone doesn't have a kind of a grip on the space time that they're currently in.
I think the vampire does it. It's up to them. It's their decision. It's not something that automatically happens. It's something that they decide to do. Now, of course, to bend space and time, you're going to have an awful lot of energy. Maybe here on Earth, you might be able to magnify, multiply the ley lines to increase energy to bend space and time. You might have to be near something like a black hole, or you could use black matter possibly to bend space and time. But they're using some type of technology that we just are not aware of yet. So it's kind of like science fiction and paranormal kind of meet. And I really feel that vampires, I feel that they are cryptids, even though most cryptid people says, "Oh no, not at all." But my book more or less introduces the vampire into being a cryptid. And I also think that vampires, their origins were not on Earth, but extraterrestrial. So, but I really feel, vampires, the fact that they cannot tolerate sunlight, I think what the sunlight does, it's so bright that it denatures their DNA. That means their DNA on a subatomic level just unravels. Of course, they would
Hmm.
die. That's the reason why they can't spend any amount of time out in direct sunlight, and they even avoid indirect sunlight. And I think that vampires came from a star system that had a very dim star,
Mm,
uh, either a blue or white dwarf could give you that type of dim, you know, that type of sunlight from a dwarf blue star during the middle of the day would almost be like moonlight on a full moon night to us. And I think they're just, how we get a sunburn if we spend too much time out in the sun during
mhm.
the summertime. Well, that's the effect of the bright sunlight on us because we were probably originally from Mars. So I think that's the reason why vampires can't stand to be out in the sun. It would actually kill them. So I think they came from another star system where they had a very dim star, and that's how they actually, were used to just not having that strong of a frequency or of sunlight. Just like sunlight can cause us to develop cancer, and cancer is mainly when your cells start to multiply rapidly, and they start to multiply in a way that is not. For instance, like if you have lung cancer, they won't multiply so that you have a second lung and you can donate that to another person. They multiply in a way that they're not, the cells that are multiplying are not able to actually breathe in oxygen.
Right. Non-healthy cells.
Yeah, it's a mutation,
Yes.
right?
Right.
So, anyway, I feel that vampires are extraterrestrial, and I like to write more about that, hopefully in future books. But I've been so busy doing everything else just to keep up with my weekly information that I put on the internet, on YouTube and uh, Instagram and Facebook. That eats up a lot of time, and just trying to catalog and store all the photos. I've had to do updates um, on my laptop and on my cell phone. Every time you do an update, it changes everything,
Yep.
Right.
everything. And I just had, I like to use my cell phone because it's very non intrusive. Ghosts and spirits seem to think my cell phone is cool. They don't want a big camera. It's just a cell phone doesn't even look like a gun. So many of your video cameras look like weapons. And I think that totally turns ghosts and spirits off. I think it just makes them feel uncomfortable because most ghosts and spirits have been around. If they died somewhere between the mid 1700s and present day time, they know what a firing weapon is. And
Mhm.
the cell phone kind of puts videotaping with the cell phone to me puts the ghosts and spirits at ease, even though you'll
That's a
still get some that don't want you to do paranormal research at the tombstones and they'll tell you quick.
Yeah, that's
So,
quite an interesting way to look at it. I guess I've never thought of it that way, that it could be something that looks like a weapon to them.
Looks harmful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So going back to reincarnation a little bit. First we had a question from Gina. Do you think there are any brand new souls out there that haven't been reincarnated yet, or do you think everybody's kind of, we're kind of at capacity and we're living that cycle constantly now?
well, I guess there's a possibility for both. There's probably maybe a new soul created. I've heard everything from that souls can split, and
Mm.
I honestly believe that, and I think that, for instance, when I was a child, I found out from my grandfather. My mother got upset with him, but apparently my heart had stopped beating at least twice after I was born. And my grandfather said, "You really put us into a scare when you were born." And then my mother jumped all over him by telling him that. But I thought that was useful information to know because I feel people who go through near death experiences have actually possibly lost part of their soul to the other side. And that means there's an empty void that can be filled by another soul wanting to jump in. And I think that can happen. And so, yes, I think new souls and new combinations of souls can be created. But I think that most people have been reincarnated over many, many times, maybe even before Earth was here. I'm not sure that our souls are just situated with Earth. I think we might have souls in other planetary, other solar systems
Mm.
light years away. Since a soul is electromagnetic energy, it can travel the speed of light. We might have at one time been in a star system 3 or 4 light years away from Earth. So I'd have to say a possibility of both to her question. But getting back to the situation of jump ins, I feel that upon someone's death, if they want to stay on Earth a little bit longer to do whatever they want to do, and they find a person like, say, me, hypothetically, who had a near death experience when I was a child, they could actually, some of their soul could add to my soul to make my soul a 100%, since some of my soul might have actually went to the other side upon death. Well, upon the near death experience as a child. So I really think that could happen. And when I was a kid, my father he used to like to follow the fire engines to see where they were going. So that's how I got interested in being an EMT and being a firefighter, and also got interested in being a medic, um, Army medic, which I was for what 17, a little over 17 years. But all that happened just because my father liked to follow the fire engines, and always wanted him to join the fire department. So as soon as I was old enough, I joined the fire department. But one time when he was following the fire engines, he was we went to a farm that had been struck by lightning, and there was a delay in the fire engine getting there because the fire engine had a accident, and it had slid off the road in between two trees. It was an area that my parents would drive by and would always say someone's going to get killed here because it's very dangerous. And two of the firefighters on the back of the fire engine were pinned between the engine and the tree. And
Mhm.
when they released the pressure, you just bleed out rapidly. So both firefighters lost their lives. But I was nearby. I was at the farm where that was their location that they were going to be going to. And so, anyway, sometimes I feel like maybe, possibly, one or both of them, some of their soul kind of sipped into my soul because I just was very good at, I guess you could say, when I was in the army, picking up and remembering and understanding uh, like guerrilla warfare and dangers that could come to be. Whether people said, they were like, why do we need to look out for tripwire? And I'm like, oh my God, why do you need to look out for tripwire? So, in tripwire, if you,
Well, you
you
don't
if
look
you
out for them, you'll learn soon enough, right?
yes, you're going to lose part of your body, if not die. So
Situational awareness. That's the biggest part. Yep.
Yep.
when I was going through my medical training at Fort Sam Houston, we did some like 3 days of live patrols where we would have to. They would set up stuff like that. They would set up booby traps that we were supposed to detect and avoid and go around. And the group I was with were just lollygagging like they were having a walk down the street. And I was like yelling at them and trying to get them to pay attention. And I was trying to be on point all the time because I was seeing everything. To this day, I can look down and find a pin on the ground, a little straight pin. I can just pick it up. I don't know why. I'm good at finding coins too that are on the ground. So anyway,
It is.
I don't think that was just all me and being intellectual. I think somewhere along the line, if not, I'll just say their last names, Mills and Clary. If it wasn't Mills or Clary who had either one or both had somewhat jumped into me, because both of them had experience in Vietnam and had survived. And they
Mhm.
were the ones that were killed on the back of the fire engine. So if it wasn't them, it was someone before them that had that training. So apparently they were watching us during this 3 day activity. And as soon as it was over, they wanted me to go airborne and ranger school. And I just told the first sergeant, this was the first sergeant in charge of the training brigade there at Fort Sam Houston. I just told him right straight out, I'm afraid of heights. I'm not going to jump out of any airplane. So anyway, I never did, but I was medical support for the ranger school by being a medic. I started out at the combat support hospital, and then it changed to a MASH unit. So anyway, but that was the highlight of my first tour of duty there in the Army was being a medic for the Rangers. And I really feel that a lot of that has to do with what you remember either from a past life or you either have a jump in that has that knowledge which is available to you.
Yeah, it
So,
sounds that might have been what happened there. Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
So with the idea of soul splitting, how do you feel that kind of plays in with quantum entanglement, where you can have two particles light years apart that can share the same state and reflect changes instantly, even though they're 500 light years apart? How do you think that affects the soul when part of it is either in a different realm, different dimension, or just very far away?
well, I think it's kind of a partial explanation for us soul splitting. I feel that there's so many possibilities that I think that you could get maybe a multitude of different souls going into another soul, percentage wise. You're still going to have a percent of 100, and there's only so much room for each individual soul. So, you know, I guess if you're the quickest soul that wants to be part of that soul, then you can split off. Then, I imagine at least maybe three or four souls might be able to combine and make a brand new soul. So I don't think you're just like, say, the soul that I am right now. If I passed away, it may split off and go in many different directions. I don't know. It may not stay. For instance, when I'm at the graveyard and I'm talking to the person that's on the tombstone, that person may no longer be a dead person. They might be a living being on another planet in another solar system and another light years away, another star system. So you
Well,
might not
Aaron,
be
yeah,
able to talk
Aaron,
to
you've
them.
talked about that quite a bit where and I'm gonna butcher it, but where I think it was a blog or a podcast you were listening to where they were getting responses almost like we were the spirits and they were the ones investigating, right?
Right. Actually, that was on oh gosh. That was on Nick Groff's show on Deathwalker. When he did Brushy and he was at Brushy Mountain in Tennessee, it's a penitentiary. He was getting responses of you're a ghost or you're a spirit. So it was almost like they're seeing us as spirits on their side, which then makes me really wonder, the whole timeline thing of if you have this timeline and it breaks off and now it's up here, are we overlapping as the spirits on their timeline?
Right.
You know,
And I've had the
which
same
kind of
thing.
falls into this whole soul thing too. If you're
Yep.
splitting a soul and part of it's on a separate timeline, now you've got the thing that you're just talking about where things can be light years apart, but a reaction has the same reaction to both parts of it, right?
Yep.
So yeah, there's so much. It's
Which
no
then
one,
also kind of backs up the stone tape theory, right? If souls are able to split and imprint and kind of make a choice on where they're going, that opens up the possibility of these buildings or objects being able to absorb this energy and then store it, for
well,
future use, I guess. Yeah.
if this fire truck accident and the souls did make that choice to fill out, Keith's 100%, it kind of shows that it'll do that. And then you take on some of those attributes that they have, right?
Yep.
Because
Right.
you wanted to
Because
join,
how else
be
would
a
I know
medic
what
and
I knew?
right.
Right.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I had
Which now,
I had a I had a friend who was he was in the Navy during Vietnam, and this was what, maybe 20 years ago, and we were we were out and about, and he ran into this other veteran that he knew, and the veteran, he said, well, the veteran was trying to think, he did like long range recon, and they had all these special uh, forts in Vietnam, and he couldn't remember the name of it. He said nobody would know the name of it because he said he can't remember. And I just took a guess. He said that was right, and I wasn't even sure what I had said. I said I don't know what I said, and anyway, he said that was the name of the fort that I was at, and I had guessed it, and I wasn't even sure what I had said.
Wow.
And another situation I can tell you about. I was a EMT and volunteer firefighter in Maryland, and I guess it was sometime after 1976. We had a family uh, in an auto accident, and they were Vietnamese, and there were a mom and a dad and 3 or 4 little kids, and their car was leaking gas very bad, and they kept going back to the car, and I told them no, it's dangerous here, and it was frustrating because I was on the ambulance, but I was also in charge of the scene, and so finally I got so frustrated with them. I remember yelling something at them, and they listened. And apparently, I yelled it in Vietnamese. And then when I got to the hospital, they asked the hospital if I could be their interpreter. And I told the lady, I don't know Vietnamese. And she said, well, you spoke to him in Vietnamese. I said, I don't know what I said. I didn't want to see. Can you imagine, uh, watching a mom and dad and 3 or 4 little kids? If a spark or something and that gasoline goes up, I didn't want to see that. And I wanted them to not be near the car. So I yelled
Right.
something at them, but I wasn't quite sure what I yelled. And I was I don't remember whether I was driving the ambulance that night or whether I was in the back. Uh, but the guy who went to the hospital with me, the other EMT, he said, Keith, you said something in Vietnamese. He said, it sounded Vietnamese to me. And I said, I don't know what I said. I don't remember what I said. I've never been in combat. Uh, so I've never been in Vietnam. So I don't know another language, a little Spanish, but that's about it. So
Yeah, I've
anyway,
always
I
found
had
that
these things
fascinating, like
happen.
head trauma, comas, stuff like that. People, speak just native English, right? And then they get a
Right.
severe head trauma, and lady spoke fluent French, never spoke it in her life.
Yeah.
There's someone that happened with German and then Latin as well.
But
Yeah.
when it comes to having this soul inside of you, that soul can become predominant when it sees that this Vietnamese family needed to get out of danger, and that soul can communicate through your mouth without your brain understanding what you said, but you will say something in Vietnamese to make sure that that family is protected. And that happened. And then the other situation, which was like 20 years ago, I had no idea what I had said, but I remember the gentleman said, well, I was at this, I don't know if he called it a fort or a unit or a location in Vietnam, but he couldn't remember the name. And I just took a guess. And he said, that's it. And I couldn't even remember what I had said.
Mm.
Wow.
So it just seems to be, and then the fact that I was so good at the 3-day training exercise where none of us, they hadn't really went over any of that during our medical training. They just kind of threw us in, and you could tell by the other guys, the other medics, not the other people on my team. I think we had like an 8 to 10 man team, the way you would say run a squad, and the others weren't taking it seriously. And I was like yelling at them. They weren't setting up perimeters when we did have a patient. And what we were doing, we were going from point A to point B, and along the way, this was at Fort Sam Houston when I was in the medical training back in 1983, they would have injured people along the way that we would have to treat. So everyone was doing good at treating, but while you're treating that person, you have to set up a 360 perimeter. They weren't doing that because the enemy's not going to take a break just because you have an injured soldier. They're going to capitalize on that. And I could not get anyone to set up a perimeter with me. So I don't know why they didn't train us on any of this. But I already knew it, and I'm not sure how or why, but I could just figure out what was going to
Just
happen and
came
what we needed to do.
intuitively
Mhm.
of, what to do, kind of, within the kind of procedures and TTPs that you have to do that stuff.
And it's a lot to think of. It's a lot that even people in a combat situation kind of learn it as they go along sometimes, which is to their detriment if they get hurt or harmed. But
Yeah.
I just seemed to pick up on it, and I think it had to do with somewhere along the way, I had a jump in who had knowledge about, the guerrilla warfare. And it could have been a jump in back in 1958. It could have been a French soldier because the French were involved in Indochina, Vietnam, South and North Vietnam, long before the U.S. was involved. So it could have been a French soldier as far back as then who jumped in. It may have not been Mills or Clary, the two Vietnam veterans that were killed on the back of the fire engine. But anyway,
So
it was somewhere
go
along that
to
way.
vampires a little bit, Keith. Like I said, I love vampires, so I got to ask you this question. What do you feel after the research you've done is kind of the most compelling evidence you've come across that vampires did and do exist?
Well, I just think that vampires were able to mate with the existing population. And there's probably a little bit of vampire in all of us. And I think it comes from our ability to do things that we surprise ourselves as to what we can do. And so I'm sure there are some vampires that are just pure vampires that didn't mate at all. But, if you were in a situation where intense sunlight could kill your offspring, wouldn't you want to mate with a native, you know, even though we were probably from Mars at sometime in the back a long time ago, the vampire would want to mate with a regular human who wasn't a vampire so that their offspring would have some protection against direct sunlight. They can live a halfway normal life and go out in the sun. So I think that there might be a little bit of vampire in all of us. And I'll go back to the first time I was in the Army. Um, I was really surprised, but I was standing on the back of the tailgate of a deuce and a half, and I asked the gentleman who was driving to pull it up, and he said, "That's not a good idea." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, I'll just tell you, it's not a good idea to stand on the back of that tailgate. It was a vehicle that jumped on you. When you put it into first gear, it just always lunged." I drove it. I ended up driving it later on while I was at that same unit. And I did a somersault off the back of the tailgate and landed with my hands out and pushed off and did a tumble on the ground and stood up. And everybody was just looking surprised, like,
Oh, to be young again.
It's those vampire skills.
now if I'd have fell on my head, I probably would have broke my neck, but somehow I fell with my hands out and pushed off the ground and just tumbled and stood up. And there are 4 or 5 other medics around, so we're all in the same unit, and they were just like looking, their mouth had just dropped. Now that's pretty spectacular for a guy that doesn't like to do tumbles. I don't tumble well at all. I'm not gymnastic at all. So anyway, that might have been my super natural vampire instinct to keep myself from having a broken neck and a head injury. And it was very quick. I mean, when that vehicle lunged like that, if he'd have just said, "Look, the vehicle lunges, you're going to fall," but they're soldiers. Why would they
No,
want to
that's not the
explain
army.
that to
They
me?
can't. Yeah, you got to learn on your own.
Yeah.
Keith,
So anyway,
where are people able to pick up your book at?
the Hayes House Ghost or People 2 is only available ebook on Kindle. Now,
Okay.
the Vampires Dead or Alive is available on Amazon paperback and ebook on Kindle.
Okay.
And I got Vampires Dead or Alive here. I don't know if you can see it that well or not.
Yep.
And I got the Hayes House. Now, this is the paperback version. It's not available anymore, but if you go to one of the stores where I did my Hayes House Ghost or People 2 book signings, if they got this book left at any of those stores in Florida and Dothan, Alabama, you might want to scarf up on it because it's no longer in print. So I haven't got. I did book signings in. Trying to think. Destin, Florida, Orlando, Florida, Dothan, Alabama. Gosh, I'm trying to remember the other places. But
Yeah, so
any
you've
of
been
those,
around doing book signings. Sounds like they were pretty well received then.
any of those places still might have some of my books. So, check them out. And it was mainly Barnes and Noble and Second and Charles. And Dothan, it was Second and Charles.
Okay.
Now,
Any future books
I
in the works?
well, I have several things that I'm working on, but I don't know if I'll get anything done by Halloween. Um, I've been just so busy on the paranormal research side that it takes away all of my time to actually write a book. I've been thinking about different things, but I don't know if I have anything done by Halloween or not. If I have another book done by Halloween, can I come back on?
Absolutely.
If you
Yeah.
have something done by Halloween, we would definitely promote it for you. We
All right,
always offer
sounds
that up
good.
to all of our guests.
That sounds good. I'll see what I can do.
Keith, it has been great having you on tonight. You gave us a lot to think about.
Absolutely.
That soul swapping is definitely something that I think I'm going to look a little more into because that is pretty interesting and part of the whole reincarnation thing too. Really.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, and that leads into a lot of conversations Aaron and I have actually had that kind of helps, back up some ideas that, we've had with, like I said, stone tape theory and
Mhm.
reincarnation and all that. So very interesting stuff.
Yeah, they're all somewhat related.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Keith, we're going to put you
Considering.
back into the green room. We appreciate you coming on tonight.
All right, thanks for having me. I enjoyed being with y'all.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Keith.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Brenda did have a question over here real quick that I wanted to touch on. About vows taken in a previous life, the effect on your current life. The death do us part in like the vows, I think then would, cut those ties when you die that you wouldn't have. And I don't think it would carry on to your current life in reincarnation, right?
Yeah, at least not as the standard, right? Maybe some of these people that seem very heavily influenced, I guess, on their past life, may carry those vows as part of, their new moral compass or, their kind of personal ethics. But yeah, I think the till death do us part. I think when some of this stuff came up, there was or was developed, I think there was a different mentality and kind of, more awareness on the spiritual side of things.
Right. So, again, another great guest. We have them all the time. We have a great following out there that reaches out and wants to be on the show. We're always looking for new guests. If you're watching and you know anyone, have them message us. We're booking for August. Sen Schrader Hill was on a few weeks ago. She sent us a list. I'm going to be getting hold of those people. If they're anything like her, those will be great shows too.
Yep. Yeah, just love pulling from the paranormal community. It's such an awesome community and everyone's so great. So always got cool stuff to talk about.
Right. Don't forget, we're going to have this special tomorrow night where we talk about our trip. You can catch all the pictures and all the good time we had over on the Way Out West Paranormal Facebook page. And we look forward to seeing you all here tomorrow night. I think it's going to be a great little chat from all of us.
I'm looking forward to tomorrow, and y'all can hear what freaked me out.
He ran.
I ran. I don't do it often.
Real quick, we do have a new thermal camera that we're using, and I was recording when you went into the woods.
Oh, that's awesome. Good deal.
So, yeah, not a ton, but I mean, I got a pretty good reaction.
Cool.
So, I don't know if we'll be able to play that tomorrow night. Hopefully, I can figure that out, and maybe you all will be able to see that.
Yeah, if not, we'll get it up on Facebook, maybe YouTube. Yeah, I mean, if we caught any part of that, on video or on that thermal, that's awesome. And we'll get into more of that tomorrow.
The sound, because it's not a
right. It's not meant to record audio.
Yep. But I don't want to ruin too much.
Yeah, no, let's dig into it tomorrow, because that makes me super excited.
All right, everyone. We appreciate you coming on tonight. Go check out Keith's books. They can get The Vampire, Dead or Alive on Amazon, and it's on Kindle. The Hayes House, we didn't cover that one. The Hayes House, Ghosts Are People Too. Probably another good read, I would bet. So yeah, go check those out.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see y'all tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Unraveling the Darkness would like to thank Horn Paranormal Research and Twinkle Twinkle Little Store for sponsoring our show. If you're craving more paranormal content, don't forget to check out our YouTube and Facebook channels at Way Out West Paranormal and Unraveling the Darkness. You can catch all of our episodes of Unraveling the Darkness on Apple Podcasts, Facebook, and YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe, as it helps others find the show and join in on the paranormal fun. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, keep your lights on, stay safe, and remember, the truth is out there, and it might just be closer than you think.